14 years ago, I became the executive director of a small shelter called Growing Home. With the help of just one other full-time staffer and hundreds of caring volunteers, we provided about 30 families a year with warm beds, home-cooked meals, and a lot of care. We had few resources, but a lot of heart. One day I was walking down the hall of our shelter, and a young woman with a baby and a toddler approached and greeted me, "Teva!" I did the, "Hey, how are you?" that I do when I don't actually recognize someone who clearly knows me. "I'm Jacqui," she said. "Do you remember me? I was in the shelter with my mom when I was a kid." At this point, I did remember her. She was a smart, energetic teen, a freshman in high school just 6 years before, full of hope for her future. Now, she was a mom herself. She dropped out of high school her senior year and was working in the local box store. "I remembered your shelter was such a safe, warm place to stay," she said. "So I thought of you when my kids and I lost our home." I was horrified. I never thought our shelter would become a rite of passage for parents in our community. Jacqui was the face of intergenerational poverty, but she wasn't supposed to be. We aimed to help families achieve self-sufficiency, not just provide a temporary place to stay during a tough time. We'd helped Jacqui's family once. She was supposed to grow up, finish school, get a good job, and live a happy, stable life. She didn't make it. And that's when I realized we were getting it all wrong. And this should worry us, because the stresses of growing up in poverty permanently alter the wiring in the brains of developing children, lowering their resilience and increasing their chances for a number of serious physical and emotional problems. Studies tell us that kids in poverty fall behind early, and that by the time they're 4 years old, they're already a year and a half behind their middle-class peers. And when they aren't reading proficiently by 3rd grade, they're 6 times less likely to finish high school. It's almost impossible for them to catch up. Now, think of Jacqui again, and multiply Jacqui by 16 million. Because right now, we're failing the 16 million children living in poverty in the US today, including 190,000 kids right here in Colorado. That's enough kids to fill Mile High Stadium 2.5 times. What I realized that day is that Jacqui isn't the failure, we are. We spend over $1 trillion each year on poverty in this country and have one of the most robust nonprofit sectors in the world. And yet our poverty rate is far higher than most of the developed world and is more than double that of our biggest global competitor, China. I believe there are 3 main ways we're getting things wrong. First, we've relegated poverty work to the realm of the heart, to the Mother Teresas, to the do-gooders, to the charities and the churches. And heart is absolutely essential, but my beef with leaving poverty there is that it's dismissive of the seriousness and the complexity of the problem we are trying to address. No matter how many cans of soup or warm beds we provide, we will not solve poverty without our brains as well. Too often we focus on the immediate human needs without addressing the issues that create them. It would be like responding to the diabetes epidemic by setting up more clinics for the blind. Next, we need to stop placing the burden of escaping poverty on the individuals experiencing it and start breaking down the crushing systems that keep people there. Like when we try to help people escape poverty by achieving self-sufficiency, when in fact what we have is a structural problem. There are far too many jobs in our economy that just don't pay a living wage. Presumably, we need all these jobs. So let's think of a way to structure it so that parents who are working full-time or more earn enough to support their families. I'll never forget the mom who came into our shelter after giving birth to triplets. Her 2-week-old preemies were still in intensive care, and she was already back at work at the fast food restaurant. Because she wasn't paid a minimum wage, a living wage rather, and because she didn't get paid for that month she'd spent in the hospital, she'd lost her home. And now she was working overtime to try to get a place to bring home her children. Each night after work, she spent 2 hours on the bus to go and visit her babies in intensive care. One day she was crying because the nurse had chided her for not spending enough time with them. And these two flaws in our methodology stem from a flaw in our belief. This kind of poverty will not always be with us. It is not the norm throughout the developed world. We can end it. So that day when Jacqui came back, I went back to the drawing board and I began to think about what we could do to actually solve poverty. We're just one nonprofit in one small corner of the country, but I pledged that day to do better and to work with our families to identify and overcome the impossible barriers that they're up against. The emerging thinking is that the ecosystem in which kids grow up matters. New study from Harvard, in fact, shows a causal relationship between the county you live in as a kid and your future earnings as an adult. They've even been able to monetize a positive or a negative effect for each year you live in a given county as a child. Since we can't just take all the kids in our poor community and move them to more affluent counties, our goal is to impact the place in which they live. We aim to reach at least 60% of the families with young children in our community. Think about how change happens. We are social creatures urged toward progress by our social networks, like when smartphones were new. Those of us who are anything but early adopters resisted at first. But when a solid majority of our friends and family had them, we went along. I was like, geez, if my dad, who types like this, can manage one, surely I can. That's the tipping point we're trying to reach. So right here in suburban Denver, in the summer of 2014, we shifted our efforts toward empowering one entire neighborhood. And rather than helping families here or there, our goal is to transform the entire community. We call this 20 by 20 block area our Blocks of Hope community. And rather than merely providing direct services, we aim to build equity in our community by reforming systems and policies. We began by going door to door to ask members of the community how they saw their community and to find out what help, if any, they needed. Because when you reach out to members of the community and you invite them to be a part of the process, it stops being about doing things for people and it becomes about doing things with people. Why do this? Because it's a small-scale approach to ending systemic poverty. We utilize a couple of key strategies to maximize our impact. The first is early childhood intervention. We know that if we can prepare a child to learn in kindergarten and keep them on the path through 3rd grade, that they will be on the path to success. Economists say that for every dollar we invest here, we're saving about $7 in future public spending. We also use a dual generation approach, addressing not only the needs of the children, but the goals of the parents as well, whether it be going back to school or working on their immigration status or joining a union. When kids and parents see each other working on their goals, the inspiration flows both ways. And we're seeing great results. In the first year, we were able to reach about 1/3 of the families we need to reach that 60% critical mass. And parents are showing improved parenting skills, increased parent participation in schools, and better family stability. Over 90% of the families we served showed a measurable improvement in skills and knowledge that we know will result in better outcomes for their kids long term. Two, we doubled the number of participating families and we began to see neighborhood level shifts. Parents are going to the school in the evening to take parenting classes. They're taking care of each other's kids when they have to work overtime. Back to school night has become a neighborhood affair. One group of moms got a playground built in their apartment building and are fighting for needed renter protections. Other parents are meeting with elected officials to advocate for the critical need to preserve and build affordable housing. There's a new sense of ownership in this community, and we're even more excited to see what happens when we reach our target saturation. If we continue on this trajectory, I'm confident we'll make a lasting change with and for this community in Northwest Denver. But we need to solve poverty nationally. And we can. We can do this the way we've achieved other historic accomplishments. When we set out to cure polio or put a man on the moon, we started by setting an audacious goal and committing to a long process of trial and error, dedicating resources and research to the problem and utilizing our experts. We can do this again for this problem. We must pledge that we will not allow this cycle to continue, not in the biggest economy the world has ever known. We all have a role to play, not just nonprofits and churches, but businesses and government too. Poverty is a complicated problem with a complicated history impacted by complicated systems. And so it's easy to get overwhelmed and just go back to doing what we've always done, or worse yet, do nothing at all. Let's acknowledge these tough truths and move forward. Let's stop blaming Jacqui for being born poor, for growing up poor, and for ending up poor as though it's somehow her fault. Instead, let's look at the systemic underpinnings of inequity that perpetuate cycles of poverty. Let's commit our hearts and our heads to solving this as a nation and not just in 20 square block areas. And let's invite the experts to the table, in this case, members of the communities that are impacted. We set out as one small nonprofit to end poverty in our community. Let's commit our vast resources to creating a tipping point as a nation so that we can stop treating the symptoms of poverty and end it once and for all.